Ladies first.
Hello, hello. I am Rhodessa Jones. This is Black on Both Sides here this afternoon in San Francisco.
How's it going? My name is Cory Elliott from Richmond, California. Welcome to Black on Both Sides.
Good afternoon.
Should we get started?
Yes, let's get started. We can maybe even jump off with a couple of lies, but no.
It's all good. It's all good. However you want to do it, you know?
Yeah, well, this is about trading stories and sharing stories.
Yes, it is.
And I was saying earlier that my grandmother was an amazing storyteller,
Okay.
and that was how she raised us.
Okay.
There was 12 of us. There was
Yeah.
12 children, and my mother and father both worked in the fields, and my grandmother would have to take care of us. And she was magical, though. My grandmother was. She was a big mama.
Yeah.
Big mama can make a pan of biscuits, and the way she be telling you about the biscuits, your little mouth be watering before they're even out
Really?
the oven.
I
Yeah.
remember those days. Where is she from originally?
My big mama, she was from Georgia,
Okay.
Payville, Georgia, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, she's long been gone, but yeah, uh, she was a healer, and she was also a midwife.
Okay.
And I was just telling someone the other day about how she would take us out. She'd wake up the girls like at 5 in the morning. She'd take us out to gather
Yeah.
herbs and stuff that were growing. And I'm still trying to figure out what was that about.
Yeah.
But the girls had to pick that one. You had to pick that one, and it was like it was pretty amazing to grow up. And it's always like time. Now I look back, she used to just be scary.
Yeah.
But I look
Back
back
then.
now, and now she's like a mythical
Okay.
creature. But
Yeah.
now, where are your folks from?
Originally, they're from the South as well, Louisiana. My grandmother migrated to Richmond when she was 14. She went to Richmond High School. She was a hooper. My grandfather was 17 when he came to the Bay Area. And together, they've had 11 children. So my mother's the youngest of 11.
Bless their
And so
hearts.
I have many cousins that I've always called aunties and uncles because of that age gap and because of how we grew up. But similar to you, my grandfather used to wake us up early. We have an orange tree in the backyard. We used to be up early cutting the lawn, picking
Yes.
oranges, washing cars, whatever we could do. My grandfather's always been about, as a man, as an adult, you need to get up early, you need to handle business, and you need to be productive.
And you got to work.
Absolutely.
My dad used to say, if you're going to be a thief, be a good one. He said, because I'm a poor man. I can't help you if you
Okay.
get into trouble. And as I grow older, the whole idea of work, I look around me and there's a lot of young folks that they, work doesn't resonate with them. I like having my own money.
Yep.
I like paying my own rent.
Yep.
And I like not being beholden to anybody.
I think that the way generations have been, right? Like my grandfather saw work as a necessity,
Yes,
and it was survival.
yes.
And I think he raised my mother similar, where she had to work for what she wanted. But my grandfather would work for work's sake. Like that's just what we did,
Yeah.
And then my mother raised us to sort of go for what we want. And I think that because we always went for what we want, we had a luxury of picking and choosing what jobs we want. And then I believe that the generation underneath me, now with the internet, is like, I don't want to do anything that's not convenient.
Yes. Yeah.
So at some point we do have to have that full cycle of just working for the sake of work. And I definitely believe in talking to the Lord with my hands moving. And that's really, really important to me.
There's a great Jamaican singer.
Okay. Talk to me.
Lord, give me strength
Okay.
to face another day,
Hey.
journeying life's road,
Journey line road.
carrying my load.
Oh.
Give me strength, oh Jah, to carry on. And I heard him once in Jamaica. I was like, he's such a baby. But he had all of the folks coming out because he sang, and there was something what you just said that struck me, that the whole idea of work,
Yeah.
work for its own sake,
Yes.
and I am composing a book now, and it's called Just Outside of Babylon. Just outside of Babylon, there's a rude paradise, and it's rooted in the fact that I'm from people that work.
Yeah.
You know, people would say, "Oh, you got that great body." I said, "Honey, I didn't get this in a dance class. I got this reaching and pulling and tugging." And here we are in this place talking about our work. And I was just saying earlier to the driver who brought me out, I was telling him about working in the schools in San Francisco.
Okay. How was
Working in,
that?
oh, it was magical because we're talking 30, 40 years ago now.
How long were you a teacher for?
I was um, I was only a teacher for a couple of years.
Okay.
I was a cedar artist after that, and it gave me more latitude to
What does
move
that
around.
mean?
CEDAR, the Comprehensive Educational Training Act,
Okay.
and it was how they hired artists.
Oh, wow.
So I ended up going into, I was working in juvenile detention, but I remember just working with children and getting children. I mean, there were Jamaicans, there were Chinese, there were Mexicans, there were children from Jerusalem.
In San Francisco, you're
Yes,
saying? Okay.
and this class, I would look at them and they were like so pretty,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they'd be wanting, and I could stand on my hands because I was a dancer and all
Okay.
that. And Miss Jones might do anything they
Yeah.
say, but I
Wow.
remember just thinking, how can I engage them in the world that they live in?
Yeah.
How do you share the history of their experience? And what worked for me was show and tell.
Okay.
I used to have them bring their grandparents to school.
I remember that. I
Yeah,
remember that. By the time I became a teacher, we weren't really bringing family to school. But when I was in high school, I actually went to high school in San Francisco. And,
Wow,
and I
okay.
was raised by my mom's mom and dad, lived in the house in Richmond. And so I've always sort of had an older soul because of it.
yeah.
And
You
teaching,
feel that way.
I feel
Yeah,
that. I feel
yes.
that. And teaching, I first started teaching in Harlem, graduated from Howard University in DC. And coming from California, coming from a small city, I'm like, New York is where it's at, Harlem is where it's at. And I would never forget, Harlem reminded me of the Bay Area. Right?
Really?
Yes, it did. I felt like the students there, I always made sure to teach our community.
Yes.
And so, unfortunately, I'm in some of the rougher schools, but the students were so smart. They were always so eager. They were all like, everyone was a character. Everyone had a unique personality.
Yes.
And that's something that I will always give a shout out to Harlem for, give a shout out to the community. They opened me with open arms. And then I taught in BK for I taught in Bed-Stuy, I taught in Brownsville, I taught in a few other areas. And everywhere that I went, I felt like blackness recognizes blackness,
Yes. Yeah.
And there's like almost like a telepathic message when I see you and you see me. And so because of that, teaching for me also was fantastic. I'm not a teacher now. I recently started a consulting business, and it's still around youth, it's still around community, but I've learned that, which is something that I don't know if you realized or not, but oftentimes we're teaching in silos. And so my students might be great for me, but as soon as they walk out that room, they kind of resort back to whatever patterns or habits or instincts that they've built.
Right, right. And you talk about students. See, I was working with children, and then the California Arts Council reached out to me and said, "Would you be interested in going into the jails and working with women because
Okay.
they were, so many women were going to jail, and I was not aware of crack cocaine at that point. We're talking 30 years ago. I wasn't aware of the flooding of crack cocaine.
Yeah.
And these people didn't know how to say, we have all these women in jail
Yeah.
and we don't know what to do with them. And the other side of that was that if your man is dealing, you can be as innocent as the days are long, but they crack that door down, they're going to take both of you adults off to jail, and the children will be lost to the state.
What's so interesting about that is I feel like women, mothers, spouses, oftentimes that's a story that's still untold to this day.
I mean, how they arrived.
Exactly.
Yes.
How they ended up in whatever circumstances they were in, how they coexisted with someone no matter what their lifestyle was. And so I'm definitely interested to hear how you got to telling the story and having this beautiful production that happened last week.
Yes. Well, I have three sets of questions.
Okay.
The hidden talent questionnaire was the first one I made with my company. My company is the Medea Project, Theater for Incarcerated Women. And it was really about finding the question, because they say that Gertrude Stein, the great writer, on her deathbed, her wife, her girlfriend, Alice B. Toklas, said, Gertrude, before you go, what are the answers? And supposedly Gertrude Stein said, my dear Alice, what are the questions? And that started to generate a whole flow. And one of the questions that I asked early on was, what is love to
Okay.
women?
Okay.
And they get all like, hee. I said, no,
Yeah.
let's go deep. What
Yeah.
is love? Because love, in a lot of ways, gets women into these predicaments.
Absolutely.
Or he said he loved me.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
the next question is, who really loves you? I say to women, I say, who really loves you? Because I was taught that persons who love you, they're going to let you in times of trouble,
Yep.
and they're going to be there to stand with you.
Yeah.
And women going, what do you mean, who loves me? And I said, no, 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 let's go deep.
Yeah.
And who do you love?
You don't want to necessarily guide where they're going,
Right.
but in telling a story, you do want a beginning, middle, and an end.
Yes,
And so
exactly.
there were multiple times where I had to say, like, not stop them from talking, but then say, okay, let's take it back to the beginning, or let's take it back to your perspective of Bayview. What do you remember of Bayview 55 years ago?
Wow.
And then
Wow.
learning, and then having each person speak and seeing the similarities about Blackness. No matter what city you're in, we as a community have very similar stories. And then we have our uniqueness that add the color and that add the hues and the sound and all the movements. But overall, in essence, we are all so proud and we are all so knowledgeable and so skilled.
Yeah. And to have lived
Yes.
this long, I love that.
Yes.
That, how they used to say it, here, my hand to God. I love that term.
Okay.
And it must have been so wonderful for them to look at you, and it's like,
Absolutely.
he looked like my grandbaby. He looked like my grandson.
Yes.
And your energy is so like, I'll ask something and then I'll wait.
No, yep, absolutely, absolutely. So, what were some challenges, if any, that you saw or that you felt with this production?
Well, it wasn't just black women.
Okay.
And I ran into one woman was amazing that she was Asian. I mean, to the point that she really spoke Mandarin better than English.
Wow.
But she had her story laid out, and then to edit it, because one of the women in my group is a dramaturge, and my niece who just joined the group, she agreed to be on stage with this woman and translate.
Yeah.
But the lady got so upset because she had designed the whole thing when she was gonna cry.
Oh, wow.
He said, "Well, you're messing with my,
polished.
are you messing with my dramatic?" And I'm like, "No, honey, let the audience find it,
Yeah.
and then see what happens to me is that I'll jump up and down and scream at women, and this lady was like, "You're disrespecting me," and I'm like, "Girl, you better be glad that's all that I'm doing." And then my folks have to say, Rhodessa, kind of take it easy. But that was a challenge because I really liked this lady.
Okay.
But the story started rolling,
Yeah.
and we're getting towards the opening, and all of a sudden she doesn't want to do. She doesn't want. She doesn't know what it is to edit something. Because in my work, I really want the women to write. They got to write it down because it's something else I can leave them with. Telling a story, shaping a story, and back to challenges. I remember when I first went into the jails, there were women said, "I don't like to write," and then you gotta look at them and go, "You don't like to write, or you can't write." or you can't spell. No, that ain't. I said, no, it's okay. I said, it's much better just come forward, be honest, versus let's wasting this time. I said, because you know, you can't bamboozle me. I'm an actress, I'm nothing else. So I know a lot about bamboozling folks. And I would make them laugh. They'd be like, Miss Jones, you crazy. I said, it goes with the territory, honey. But that was one thing. And then when women would go really deep, and the questions of incest, molestation would come up, and they would cry, and I'd say, okay, we gonna all cry. Then we gotta stop crying. Then what we gonna do? And they would be like, looking at me like, for real? My tears ain't gonna stop this, huh? No, no, no. We gonna cry. And and I got a lot of women say, thank you for making me go the distance, you know. Because I've had, over these 30 years, I've had women who walked out. I've had women who died. They get out of jail and they promise they're gonna come back, but they get caught up. And then they're found in a alley or something. That happened a lot. And it was like, yeah, it was really weird because my social worker, the person who mentored me, she said, get ready, girl. Get ready because all kinds of things are going to happen. And then it would take me back to saying to women, you got a right to a life. Let us examine your life. Because somebody's life just ended last weekend, you know? Yeah, so there was a wonderful woman who was the piano player I met at the county jail a long time ago. And I'm in New York 2, 3 years after that. And a playwright, the guy who wrote Jesus Christ Superstar, I'm at a party talking about being from San Francisco, and he asked me about this woman. He said, do you know her? And it blew my mind because she had been on Broadway and Jesus Christ Superstar. But the backstory had been so heavy duty about her relationship with her father and and her mother, who kind of sold her down the river. I mean, she literally was on the road. She was her father's companion in every sense of the word, you know, and had no recourse but to hold it all in. And she was doing heavy drugs to keep herself together. And all of that came, I'm looking at this man in New York talking about how talented she was. And I come back to San Francisco and I say, you know, I met this playwright and he knew you. She goes, yeah, I know him. And this one was a brilliant piano player. I mean, all this was like natural, you know. And then to find out because she worked with me for a while after that, to find out that all this other stuff she was holding. And I tell people, let it go, you know, it's somebody else's garbage, it's not yours, you know. So yeah, those are my kind of challenges, and also had to be patient with people, you know.
I had a couple myself.
Really?
I think that something similar to what you said is opening, kind of ripping a wound off.
Yes.
But how deep do we go, and at what point do we turn around?
Yeah.
And so when I really first started interviewing and getting footage and getting stories from people regarding Bayview, I was dead set on, let's talk about the positives of the community.
Okay.
And I realized that, one, I can't tell your story for you. And so
Yes.
I have to allow people to share it and to kind of get to wherever they're getting to on their own with light guidance. And so I transitioned from having this kind of utopian concept of let's only talk about the good to let's talk about the real.
Yeah.
And once I got there, the bulk of people were almost scorned by the current state of Bayview or by certain challenges they've been through in their life. And then I realized that, okay, maybe you haven't had the opportunity to share this story like this. Because at the end of everyone's story was a lot of hope, was a lot of God, was a lot of, we got to do X, Y, and Z. This is what we need to do. This is what the young folks can do. And so we always got to the sun, if I can call it that.
Yeah, yeah.
But almost everyone had a tunnel that they had to get through to get to the light. And some tunnels were longer than others. And there were moments where tears were shed. Yeah. And there were moments where I almost felt like, what do I do now? You have shared something that is so powerful, so heavy. And right now we're in the depth of the tunnel where we're like, how do I make a curve so we
Yeah.
can get to the light? And I found that personally that was challenging, as well as consistent communication.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
once people start, everyone's like, "Yes, I'll be back on this day. What time do you need me?
I
Absolutely."
love
Then
it.
the day comes, and 1 out of 4 folks show up.
But- Oh,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
it looks like that resonates with you. That's
Oh
good.
my God, I had, when I first went into the jails, I'm talking about what I want to do.
Okay.
I want to create a space where we can tell our stories. I didn't even tell them about performing them. I
Okay.
just said, I want us to be able to speak freely and purely about our experiences. And there was one young woman who came in. She did not approve of my tone. She did not approve. She ended up telling me, you just one of them dive ass black girls that's been to a fancy school. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And she just like tried to tear me down.
Okay.
No. And I found out later that she had actually been from a family that was very advanced,
Wow.
but she was dribbling ball the whole time, and the women are saying, "Why don't you stop? Miss Jones is trying to talk."
Yeah.
And I thought, this is my rites of passage.
Okay.
If I don't get this woman to stop, I'm not gonna be able to do any of
Anything.
this with.
Yeah.
And the deputies are watching me too, like, "Okay, Jones,
What you
work
gonna
your
do?
magic." And I always say I have two little devils. One's white and one's black. The little black one is saying, just snatch that ball from her.
Uh huh.
just
Uh huh.
and I'm thinking, you think I can snatch the ball? I'm thinking this woman she could clean up this gym with me. But I snatched the ball.
Okay.
And she was like,
Yeah.
and I said, you know what? I said, they pay me to be here. And I'm gonna go home at 2 o'clock.
Yep.
I said, and if all I gotta do is yell, and those cats up there with the guns, they will take you back to the dorm. Now she's getting teary
Okay.
because she's feeling like I have betrayed her somehow. And I'm looking at her like, girl, I don't want to do this either to you. But you gotta show me the respect. And the cops, the guards are saying, Jones, what's happening? And are you guys all right? I said, I think so. And I asked this lady, I said, Deborah, are we all right? And she's like, now she looked at me like, no, oh, you gonna put the ball back in my court? I said, you gotta tell me. I said, because they're ready
We
to
good or no?
pounce, baby. And she said, yeah, yeah. And I said to the cops, I said, yeah, we're good, we're cool.
Okay.
And from that day to this one, she became a real helper to me.
Yeah.
I see her in the streets in the Fillmore. She's a peer counselor for women living with HIV.
Okay.
You know, she
She's doing it.
she she turned and she was a little thug. I mean, she was in jail because she had snatched somebody's grandmama's purse. But she turned, and I can't take all the credit, but she used to watch me.
Okay.
She said, "You be for real, huh?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Yeah. What's the point of coming up in here lying?
Yes.
Or misusing people?"
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and she always hugs me and says, I think about you every time I'm out talking to a new group of people.
Okay.
I said, "But good." I said, "I hope that whatever you think I said worked."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the impact. So most of the people that we had conversations with, it was over a 2-day span. Not consecutive, but the first day would be more like a sit down like this. The second
Right.
day is more so in the community, a lot of B-roll shots, a lot of just casual conversation.
You're like walking around and stuff too. Wonderful. Oh my God.
And the second time that I saw someone, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, grandson, how are you? What's up? What you doing?" And so that's when I was able to see the impact of just that hour, right? Because storytelling can be for a second, it can be for a minute, it can be for an hour. And yet, in all that time, you or the person or the people that are listening can carry something forever.
Yes. Yes.
And that's one thing about telling stories and about hearing stories that I'm so honored to be a part of. And I'm so thankful for all of this because in stories, like who know, like there's something that you may say right now that may resonate with me 6 months from now. And I'm like, oh, I remember when we were talking about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And there's something that may hit me this afternoon. And so the fact that you never know when gems from the stories or the conversations you have are resonate with you personally, or where, when you feel like deja vu, like,
Yes.
oh, my grandma was just telling me about this, and now 60 years later, I'm on the same bus or I'm walking the same street that she was, and I'm thinking about a laugh or a story that she told me. And I feel that with this documentary now, like there's parts of Bayview I never knew existed.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
great.
there's so much history here that I didn't know
Wow.
of, and there's so much connection. And so, if there's one thing I've taken away from the stories that I've had, every single person I spoke to sounds like an aunt, a cousin, or a partner that I've had throughout my life. Everyone reminds me of a family member that I know, and everyone's story is so different, and yet we're all similarly walking and trying to better
Yeah.
ourselves and
Yeah.
trying to do right for everybody else.
And as you're talking, I'm imagining the elders looking at you because the media is not kind to us, you
Yes,
know.
yes,
And
absolutely.
some of us get out here and make a bad name for everybody. And they're looking at you and they're going, all right, things are gonna be okay, you know, because you were sent,
Yes,
you know, and and you might have even healed some wounds or some scrapes that somebody had. Because one thing,
absolutely.
when I was working in the jails, I remember when I was with men and women, because I did
Okay.
that for a minute, the young men that, you know, they three strikes,
Yeah.
you know, or your grandmother or your aunt loses her place because she let you live there. I still know what happened to those people. When she was just doing what she blood said she should do, but then you know, our police come in finding guns, finding drugs, and what they can do is just shut the thing down. And I wonder what happened to some of those women.
Yeah.
Because I remember one girl was saying, I can always stay at my grandmother's house, but she couldn't stay on the ground. She was always like out trying to make that quick dollar or something. And there are the projects across on Fulton Street over in the Fillmore,
Okay.
and a lot of them got lost because people lost their homes because the grandchildren, whoever they were housing, slipped up. Not even saying that they did it on purpose,
Yeah.
but like that's what the law of the land can lay down. You know, it's
Absolutely.
like no, everybody out, everybody go. So when you're talking to them and they're walking around you, I bet you just made their heart so full.
I
You
hope
know.
so. I hope so. It feels like it. Was there something that you learned when you were doing this, whether it was, during it, before, after, in regards to the community of people that you chose, and in regards to the production?
Well, that's a really loaded question, but you had said something when we first came up. You were saying how we are family, you
Yes.
know, that comes into play anyway, you know, and that always helped me. And the whole idea of one thing I love about the people who live they live outside the law,
Okay.
that they'll take that chance,
Absolutely.
and
They'll
that
risk it.
has taught me about risk. You know, I mean, I ain't no fool,
Yeah.
but you know, but I learned from women about the taking that risk, and there was a story one young lady told me about her girlfriend set her up, and her girlfriend had met the guy. Was lesbian, but they knew the guy they'd gone to high school with. And so this woman had set up a deal where supposedly she and her girlfriend was going to meet this young brother who was a drug dealer, and they were going to get busy. They were going to make money, right? But the girlfriend didn't show up. She showed up.
Wow.
And there was some deal that obviously she had made with this kid. And so she gets there and she's trying to, you know, bullshit and everything, but she's wondering, where's my girlfriend? And she realizes, this woman's not coming. And this guy and his two partners are like leaning in, looking at her. She's like, oh man, I'm it. I'm dinner,
Yeah.
you know? And this guy had liked her in high school.
Wow.
So then he wanted to play strip poker. She's like, oh God, you know, and they're in an abandoned Victorian well, not abandoned, but it was under construction, and they're on the second floor. And she's thinking, I'm gonna just try to keep my shoes on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a bag. She said that was a bag on the floor. That she said that's where the money and everything was in this bag.
Okay.
And she felt like the bag was like talking, like over here, over here. So they get to playing, and at one moment, she said, something said, now. And she grabbed the bag and ran, jumped over the banister,
Wow.
and catches these guys by surprise.
Absolutely.
And she still got a little bit of a graze or a bullet, but she was down. This is all in the hate, right? She's down the street with no pants on, just her shoes and a bag, and she runs out into the street, and an old lady nearly hits her with a car. And she says, help me, those guys are they're trying to catch me. And the lady's looking at her like, my God, get in. And these guys are standing like, what happened?
Yeah.
She got away with the money, but she said, and then she was back in jail for something else, and she could hardly catch her breath. She's telling us, and I, and I, and I, and I. And I said, baby, you live to tell the story.
Absolutely.
And I think about her often. And I'm not a heavy chance taker.
Okay.
But I think about how brave that was to like
Yeah.
say, she said she has heard the moment said now.
Hmm.
And she said she told her woman, take me to Daly City. And she had a little
Got up out
bag
of
with,
there, huh?
she got a bag with some money, some
Okay.
drugs in it.
Okay.
And I think about that girl.
Yeah.
I think about her all the time. And we lift her up and back to culture. And there was mostly black women in jail at that moment. I said, y'all, we got to lift her up.
Yeah.
Everybody lay your hands on her.
Yeah.
And they lifted her up over their heads and walked her around. And I was saying, it's okay. You're alive, baby. You're alive. And the older women are saying, yeah, girl, you did that. You
And
did that.
speaking of that, we live so many chapters in this book of life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it was so interesting to see people at their current state and then to hear of all that they have been through to get here. One person we spoke to in particular, her story and just some of the decisions or choices that she's made in her life, you would never be able to tell from looking at her and the way she presented herself, the way she spoke.
Wow.
And I felt so honored that she was comfortable enough to share
Wow.
with us
Wow.
and everyone. I mean, one person, she had been locked up before, and I'm looking at her like, what, how, when? And just the reminder that you will continue to live life, and as you do, you will continue to have chapters, and there are parts and pages that you may forget about, but there's moments and there's parts and pages that will always stick with you.
Yeah, and the roads,
Yes.
all the roads
Yes,
that we
absolutely.
travel. And I remember I would say to people, even when I was dancing, I was much younger, but I'm a migrant child. My mother and father were migrant workers. And people would accuse me of being a sloppy dancer. I said, I didn't get this body in a ballet studio. And I would tell them, you don't know me. You don't know me. You have no idea. And I have a friend she's from the company and she's still with me.
Okay.
And she says, I often look at you now and I think we really didn't know you, did we?
Yeah.
And I said, no, you didn't. I said, but that's for every one of us. Every one of us come into a room and we change the molecules in that room.
Absolutely.
Just by who we are and who we bring into the room.
So let me ask you this. What is it that you mentioned earlier before the cameras were on about your t-shirt Nipsey Hussle and how you were trying to figure out what to put on and it was just calling to you. So can you tell me a little bit about, what that means to you or why you chose to wear it today?
I was at the National Black Theater Festival about 5 or 6 years. You ever been there? You should go. It's wonderful in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Okay.
And this shirt was hanging on a clothes hanger near this merchant's stuff. And I was like, this is the most beautiful shirt, the material, everything. And he gave it to me for $25.
Okay.
And I thought, Rhodessa, what are you going to do with a Nipsey Hussle t-shirt? But by this time, I had the history of Nipsey Hussle under my belt.
Absolutely.
And then I went to South Africa last October for a women's conference. I thought, I'm going to take my Nipsey Hussle t-shirt with me.
Okay.
So I went, and the African women went crazy.
Really?
And I thought, of course, they would know. And a woman said to me, Nipsey was for the people.
Yes, he was.
And that resonated with me. And then when he saw my dog in Compton, you know, my dog is hanging out the window barking, and Nipsey pulls up and says, "Nice dog."
Okay.
And my granddaughter loses her mind.
Yeah.
Grandma, that was. I'm like, who was it? She goes, Grandma, that was Nipsey Hussle. And I'm like, great name, but who the hell was Nipsey Hussle? But when he died, when he was murdered as he was, and they were crying. So my daughter and my granddaughter, and I thought I'd go in search of this brother. And his funeral, when his mother spoke at his funeral.
Absolutely.
And when you look at his shop at that time, and he was for the people, but it was also about being as self-sufficient as you can be.
Absolutely.
And he was so young. He was so young and so smart. And so whenever I'm going to go anywhere, I take him with me. I don't even know if I can always wear it,
Yeah.
but in my suitcase, there is this gorgeous man, and his very presence says, you know, remember who you are? And
Absolutely.
remember that you can always bring something
Absolutely.
that can change the molecules. And when I go places and I'm talking to young people, I was at the library 2 or 3 years ago, and I had this shirt on, and the narrator said, "Well, who's that?" And I said, "Could somebody in this room tell this man who the," and all of us, you know, we're like, "I'll tell him, I'll tell him." And a girl stood up and told him about Nipsey Hussle. And he was looking at me like, and I said, "He inspires me too, sir."
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so,
He was, a mentor that I never personally met, but
oh,
through his
really?
music,
Mm,
when I was in DC, his music really helped get me through college.
really?
Being way in Washington and being from California, you hold on to semblances of yourself, of your community, of where you come from.
Right.
And I think what you said about being self-made and about never stopping, it is a marathon. And as long as we know where we're going, and even
Yeah.
if you don't, if you know the direction, and as long as we keep going, and as long as we know who we are, which is something that I really learned from Nipsey, and like I said, mentorship. Like I can listen to a song today, and I'm hardly even listening to the music as much as programming my mind and thinking about what I want to do next, and how can I do this, and how can I do that. And so he has been one of the biggest inspirations that I would say, obviously, not only for me, but for my community, for the culture,
Yes, the whole
for us as a
generation of
people.
us. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You
And
all, we have 5 minutes. We want to wrap up because I know you have a hard out. Um, Genevieve, you had a question you wanted them to answer, and then, yeah. So, what's your?
Well, I heard you all talk a lot about healing and how, you've observed other people's healing through the work that you're doing. I'm curious about how it's healed both of you. And part two of my question is, Miss Rhodessa, you've been an artist for for
I'm 75.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, you're 75, so you've been an artist for probably
50 of those years.
yeah.
Yes.
And Cory, I know you've always appreciated art, but I think this is the first time I've heard you talk a lot about considering yourself an artist. So
He's marvelous.
yeah, so I want you both to speak about being Black artists, what that means for you, how it supported your healing journey, how you uh, healed yourselves through art, and also you talked a lot about healing others, but I would love for you to both just boast and gloat about yourselves and what artistry has meant for you personally.
Well, I travel a lot. I toured a lot. And airports, I always, you got to wait for the plane. That plane changes. And I found that to get somebody to start talking about their journey, like we've been talking, you usually have to open up yourself.
Yeah.
And it's such a, I say to people, once you hear somebody's story, it changes you forever. And it changes them, and you may never see them again. But it's like it the road has been clear. It's even back thinking about Nipsey and how, you might not know where you're going, but we know his story. And we know that if you persist, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I found that to be incredibly healing to have that knowledge for myself, you know. Not that I'm always happy and up and everything, but deep inside, I have a place that I can retreat to,
Okay.
you know, and I guess it's prayer, I guess, but yeah, that's what I would say about healing, storytelling for myself.
Yeah. For me personally, I've always been a visionary.
Mm,
Like God has always given me like I can go down to the detail of how many steps someone should take, what cars were going by, what words were said. And for most of my life, I felt like a caged bird in the sense of I have
mm,
so much inside of me.
mm-hmm.
One, I don't always feel comfortable sharing it. And two, I don't know if I'm verified to even call myself an artist because I, up until now, didn't have much of a tangible something, a showpiece, a song, a
Right.
dance. And so this really, this was very, very healing for me in being able to get something that's in my mind outside to the world and to not so much think about the audience, but to think about what do I see in my head? How do I want this to look? Which ways do I want to capture? What questions do I want to ask?
Mm-hmm.
And so, being an artist and being a black artist and being someone that for my entire life has had so much artistry oozing out of me, but to finally find some ways of channeling it
Yeah.
has definitely been healing and has definitely been a sense of comfort.
But and I would just add that more so than just an artist, you're an activist,
Yep,
which is like the cherry on top.
absolutely.
You know, because it's an artist is great. You know, I mean, people used to say to me, "Wow, you've been on TV," you know, because they think that that's art. But I know that I have changed lives.
Absolutely.
You know, and it is, and I have been invited to move around. You know, and I think those things are so. It's like not quite, but it's like being a prophet in a lot of ways, which is a
Absolutely.
bigger than just being an artist, but an art activist
Yes.
is what I always tell people that I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much
Oh,
for
thank
sharing the
you.
stage, sharing these stories.
I just love you. I do. No,
Absolutely.
I love you. You know, I growing up, but this is another story. Is living in upstate New York. My mother and father came off of the migratory trek. We bought a little farm,
Okay.
and the Alabama boys used to come,
Hmm.
and they were black boys from Alabama who'd come up to work the fields. And when you walked in today, you reminded me of so many of them. It's like that kind of length, that beautiful skin, that ease. And I thought he's a descendant of the Alabama boys.
I might be. Ain't no telling.
You might be my brother,
Ain't no telling.
really.
Yeah, this has been an honor though, and I really do
It has
appreciate
been.
you
I'm
for
so
sharing
glad
this.
that I thought we worked so well together. You know, you would bring it in, bring you like, then you pull back, and it's like, okay, well, it's your turn. Thank you all for making this happen. Thank you so
Absolutely. Thank all of
much.
y'all.
And
Especially for all of us.
oh, it's wonderful. I love this space. You know, I'm so glad I got to do my Black on Both Sides thing out here, and I will be back. Like to work it some more. It really was.
Shout out to the Bayview Opera House,
Yes.
and of course, shout out to Black on Both Sides. We
Yes.
out here.